Why does the moment you increase your position size feel powerful right before it destroys you? Not your strategy, not the market, your brain. Something happens the second you click that size up, the second you go from one contract to three, from 100 shares to 1,000, from comfortable to this actually matters now. And in that exact moment, something in your brain shuts off. Not metaphorically, neurologically. Today, we're going to break down exactly what happens inside your skull the moment risk increases, and why almost every trader who blows up right after sizing up. Not during a losing streak, not during chaos, right after a moment of confidence. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand why just risk more, you've got an edge, is the most dangerous sentence in trading. Let's get into it. Point 1. The amygdala hijack, when your ancient brain takes the wheel. Here's something most traders never learn, and it costs them everything. Your brain has two systems making decisions. One is slow, rational, calculated. It weighs probabilities. It thinks in expected value. This is your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that built the trading plan, back-tested the strategy, calculated the 1% risk rule. The other system is ancient. It doesn't calculate. It doesn't wait. It reacts. This is your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear, threat detection, survival. Here's the part nobody tells you. Your amygdala doesn't know the difference between a tiger chasing you and a red candle wiping out $3,000 in 11 seconds. To your nervous system, it's the same threat. And under threat, your amygdala doesn't ask your prefrontal cortex for permission. It hijacks it. Neuroscientists call this an amygdala hijack, a moment where the emotional brain overrides the logical brain completely. Now, here's why position size matters so much. When your size is small, a loss creates a small emotional signal. Annoying, but survivable. Your prefrontal cortex stays in charge. You can still think. But the moment you increase your size, really increase it, the dollar amount crosses a psychological threshold. Suddenly losing isn't just losing, it's threatening, it's personal, it's I can't afford this. And the second your brain perceives a trade as a threat to survival instead of a simple probability event, the amygdala takes over. You stop thinking in probabilities, you start thinking in survival. And that's why traders who were calm and disciplined at one size become reckless, hesitant, or frozen the moment the size goes up. It's not a character flaw, it's biology. Point 2. Loss aversion. Why losing hurts twice as much as winning feels good. Daniel Kahneman, the father of behavioral economics, discovered something that changes everything about how you should think about position sizing. Losses are not emotionally equal to gains. They never have been. Losing $100 doesn't feel like the opposite of gaining $100. It feels worse, roughly twice as bad, according to Kahneman's research on loss aversion. Now, think about what that means when you increase size. If losing $50 creates a 1 unit of emotional pain, losing $500 doesn't create 10 units of pain. It creates something exponential. Your brain doesn't process loss linearly. It processes it like a spiral. So when you size up, you're not just multiplying your risk. You're multiplying your emotional volatility. And emotional volatility is the single biggest predictor of bad trading decisions. Here's where it gets dangerous. Because loss aversion doesn't just make losses feel painful. It makes you behave irrationally to avoid that pain. You'll hold a losing trade too long, hoping it comes back, because closing it means making the loss real. You'll exit a winning trade too early, because the fear of losing the gain feels stronger than the desire to let it grow. At small size, these instincts cause small damage. At large size, These same instincts cause account-ending damage. This is why just size up once you're profitable sounds logical on paper, but psychologically, it's like handing a calm person a loaded emotional weapon. The strategy didn't change. The exposure to pain did. And pain changes behavior faster than logic ever will. Point 3. The illusion of control and overconfidence bias. Let's talk about the moment right before most blowups happen, because it's not a moment of fear. It's a moment of confidence. You just had 3 winning trades in a row. You're feeling sharp, locked in. The market feels readable, and a thought creeps in. I've got this figured out. Let me size up. This is overconfidence bias, one of the most well-documented and dangerous cognitive distortions in all of behavioral psychology. Here's the trap. Winning streaks don't just boost your account, they boost your perceived skill. Your brain releases dopamine with every win, and dopamine doesn't just make you feel good, it makes you feel certain. It narrows your perception of risk. It convinces you that recent results are reliable evidence of future outcomes. Psychologists call this the illusion of control, the belief that you have more influence over random or probabilistic outcomes than you actually do. In trading, this shows up as, I'm in a flow state. I'm reading the chart well. This is the moment to go bigger. But here's the brutal truth the greatest traders in history understood. Jesse Livermore made and lost several fortunes precisely because he sized up emotionally in moments of confidence instead of mechanically based on a fixed rule. He wrote about this himself, that his biggest losses never came from bad analysis. They came from increasing size at the exact moment his ego believed he was invincible. Confidence feels like clarity, but neurologically, it's often just dopamine wearing a mask. And the moment you size up because you feel right, you've already left logic behind. Point 4. Cognitive load and the collapse of working memory. Here's something almost nobody talks about, and it's pure neuroscience. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part of your brain, has limited working memory. It can only hold so much information, so many variables, so much weight, before it starts making mistakes. Under normal conditions, with normal size, you can track price action, your plan, your stop loss, your target, and your emotional state simultaneously. Your brain has enough bandwidth. But increase your size dramatically, and something happens that researchers call cognitive narrowing. Stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, flood your system the moment perceived risk increases. And these hormones don't enhance your thinking, they impair it. Specifically, they shrink your attentional field. You stop seeing the whole chart. You start fixating on the P&L number, on the ticking clock, on the fear of being wrong. This is why traders under high size pressure report things like, I just froze. I couldn't think straight. I knew my plan, but I couldn't execute it. That's not weakness. That's your working memory collapsing under cognitive load created by emotional stress. It's the same reason elite athletes choke under pressure in championship moments, even after years of flawless practice. The skill didn't disappear. The brain's ability to access that skill did, because stress hijacked the bandwidth needed to use it. Position size isn't just a math input into your strategy. It's a direct lever on your cognitive capacity. The bigger the size, the smaller your thinking becomes. Point 5. Identity threat. When losing money becomes losing yourself. This is the deepest layer, and it's the one almost nobody addresses. At small position sizes, a loss is just a loss. It doesn't threaten who you are. But increase size enough, and something shifts. The loss stops being financial. It becomes personal. Psychologists call this identity threat, when an external event feels like it's attacking your sense of self-worth, competence, or identity. This is why a trader can lose $50 and shrug it off, but lose $5,000 and spiral into self-doubt, anger or shame. The dollar amount changed, but so did the meaning. At high size, a loss isn't just the trade didn't work. It becomes, I'm not good enough. I'm reckless. I'm a failure. And the moment your identity is on the line, your brain stops optimizing for good decisions. It starts optimizing for emotional survival, which often means revenge trading, doubling down, or freezing completely. This is the real reason size matters more than strategy. You can have a brilliant edge, a statistically proven system, but if your position size is large enough to threaten your identity when it goes wrong, you will sabotage that edge every single time. Not because you're undisciplined, because your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do: protect you from a perceived existential threat. And here's the irony. The traders who appear fearless with size aren't actually fearless. They've simply built enough psychological distance between their identity and their account balance that a loss doesn't register as a threat. That's not bravado. That's emotional regulation, and it's trainable. So what do we do with all of this? Here's the takeaway, and I want you to actually sit with this one. Your strategy was never the problem. Your edge was never the problem. The moment your brain switches from calculated to emotional is the moment your position size crosses a threshold your nervous system can't handle. Small size keeps your prefrontal cortex in charge. Large size hands control to your amygdala. Small size creates manageable loss aversion. Large size creates exponential emotional pain. Small size keeps overconfidence in check. Large size turns one winning streak into one devastating blow-up. Small size protects your working memory. Large size collapses it under stress. And small size protects your identity from every red candle. Large size turns every loss into a referendum on who you are. This is why almost every trading psychology book, every legendary trader, every risk management rule keeps coming back to the same unsexy advice. Trade small, stay rational, scale slowly. Not because small is exciting, but because small keeps your brain online. The traders who last decades aren't the ones who found the perfect strategy. They're the ones who understood that position size is a psychological lever, not just a financial one, and they respected it. If this video gave you a new lens on why you struggle the moment size increases, that wasn't weakness you felt. That was neuroscience. Subscribe to The Inner Edge if you want more breakdowns like this, because the real edge in trading was never just in the charts. It's in understanding your own mind before the market ever gets the chance to. I'll see you in the next one.